Cold Trip Nowhere, it is a lifelong dream taking form.
I don't have any crazy expectations for this band, but I know that we have something, and I know that Christian knows that too, and I know that Lennon knows that, and just the fact that I think we have faith in ourselves is a big deal.
Well, it makes me happy that they're pursuing what they love, and they're not doing it for the dollar. They're doing it for the satisfaction of creating and going out, creating an outlet for other people.
Even with the absences of each other in certain parts of our lives, really it's just, I think we're all growing up together, and really it's just three guys who really want to make something that's worth somebody's while.
Hi, my name's Zach Busby. I am 21 years old, and I'm the lead singer in A Cold Trip Nowhere. First really started listening to music when I was a little kid, sharing a room with my brother, and he'd turn on the radio at night, and that's really where I started listening. A lot of oldies. I didn't really know I wanted to be a singer until I started kind of singing in the church choir. My whole family is a part of that. But before that, I was just in marching band. There's a couple other guys that were in choir also, and just kind of work off each other, whether it's making up songs or singing old songs, just anything music was awesome. And I tried out for the vocal class, and I made it.
I'm Lennon Nichols, I'm 17, and I'm the drummer for Cold Trip Nowhere. When I was younger, Blink-182 was pretty much the band that got it for me. Christian was a huge influence for me, and it got me to start liking music. And then it just excelled from there. Started taking classes, got into drumming and playing, and it went from there. I took beginner classes and just learned the basics for a couple months, and then I got with a dude named Princeton Patterson, and he taught me pretty much everything, like really intricate stuff. Played a lot of Travis Barker stuff and just got me hooked on doing some really intricate, crazy stuff, and that was about it.
I'm Cody Nichols, and they call me the Navigator. I produce and engineer the records, and involved in all the production duties as a producer normally would, pre-production and that whole bit. Yeah. I've been involved with music all my life. I started in the music business, if you will, when I was 12 in radio and broadcast, and I've been doing that for going on 28 years now. Still very involved with that part of it, but I was in bands. I think I was in my first band at 14 and was playing in bars and clubs at 14. And being in the broadcast industry as well opened up this world of producing and production rooms and that kind of thing. So started playing with that on my own in a production room, and then took the things that I was learning into my bands, and started recording my bands, and it was horrible in the beginning, and that's kind of where it started for me.
Hey, my name is Christian Nichols. I'm 19 years old, and I play guitar and sing backing vocals in A Cold Trip Nowhere. I first got into music at a young age. My dad was bringing bands in and out of small project studios, and music was just a household thing. MTV was always on in the background when they actually played music videos still, VH1 as well. But I first discovered that I had a true desire to play music and be a musician when I first heard All the Small Things by Blink-182. And I've kind of ventured away from that, but I mean, being in the studio around musicians and just falling in love with the pop punk genre, that's really kind of what sent me into the musician mindset, I guess. Culture of Nowhere started when Zach and I actually got together I found out that he loved Blink and I loved Blink, so we got together and jammed a couple of Blink songs that he knew.
Like, we'd kind of skated some before, but Blink 182 got back together, and Christian was like, hey man, I hear you like Blink 182, you want to go to a show with us? And so of course I said yeah, and I went, and we started kind of talking about doing music of our own.
Well, Christian's my brother, so me and him just were obviously interested in music at a pretty young age. We grew up around it a lot, and it was something that I think we kind of both always wanted to do, and we just started writing and playing around, and it became something a lot bigger.
A Culture of Nowhere started out with me, Christian, and Lennon sitting up in this tiny, hot room, just trying to write stuff. I think the first time we got together, I had this old crummy bass guitar, and we started playing Blink songs together.
And then we were like, how about we actually start writing our own songs? And I mean, Lennon has played drums. He's been beating on pots and pans ever since he was 4. So with Lennon being the drummer, we just kind of took everything that we had collectively and did what we could with it.
A lot of nights were me, Christian, and Lennon sitting around, Christian playing random guitar rhythms and then us humming to them. Lennon kind of laying there being asleep, not doing much, but he was a little kid. He needed his naps, so.
And we did it a couple of times after that, and then we just decided to get serious about it and start writing and playing more and figuring out what we needed to do. And I think that's pretty much how it all started and came together.
Then we'd go downstairs, get Christian and Lennon's parents to sit down on the couch, and they'd be our first audience for most of the songs we wrote. Cody and Becky were awesome to play for, because yeah, they're gonna like their kids' music no matter what, but I remember probably our biggest song, at least at the time, just playing it for the first time for them, and Cody was in tears.
When they came to me with their original stuff, I was a bit taken back that they were so young, but at the same time, they were bringing me stuff that was really grown up. I mean, it was a mature material. I had no clue that they had that in them, and you know, as somebody that's really close to them, of course, you know, you could say that I'm partial, but I also like to tell the truth to bands. These guys were really impressing me.
Sounds pretty good, huh?
Yep.
Our first show was at the Booth Hotel in Independence, Kansas. It was in the basement. We played with Matthew Feeds the Bears and this other kid who we went to school with had a band, and we just that was our first show. We did a few covers and a few of our originals, and that was our first real live playing experience as a band.
The first culmination of A Culture of Nowhere was really just us playing acoustic shows, and it was really just us teaching ourselves how to write good songs. We went to school with a lot of musicians, but it was just a hobby for them, and it was something that we really believed in and were really passionate about. So we were trying to stand out from the people who were making it a hobby. Zach was one of my only one of the first best friends I ever had. And it just kind of got to where we had to go through these changes just growing up that come with life. And Zach decided that he had other things going on, and he was really busy too. Our schedules were kind of not working at all.
We didn't want to be labeled a Christian band, but we wanted to kind of push those values. And I was trying really hard to do that, but I also got caught up in a lot of partying and the stuff that comes along with going to high school. And that just wasn't the way things would work out because I couldn't be honest with my bandmates. I couldn't tell them that I was out partying and stuff.
It was really terrible the way I went about it because I kind of started telling people like Zach was about to get the boot before I actually asked him to leave.
One day I heard that I'd been replaced, and not from Christian or Lennon, which was pretty crummy, but I was just at a point where it didn't bug me that much. I was kind of ready to just be done with them. I didn't want to try and be something that I wasn't.
Then Busby left the band.
I just wasn't able to put all of what I needed to put into the band, and I just wasn't being fair to Christian and Lennon.
You stood behind me while I kept on running. Hope you're happy because you got what you wanted. Wait a second.
Before we tracked Coordinates, or before Coordinates was even a thought really, I had these songs that I really believed in, and some of them were songs that Busby wrote with us. But I just knew that we had to do something with them. And as much as I wanted to be the vocalist of the band, it just wasn't gonna work because I like to write songs, but I just don't see myself as the front man of the band. I just want to play guitar and do background vocals. That's cool with me. That's where I fit.
Okay, so we decided to get serious about writing and everything and playing, and we played shows and started writing a lot more, and then Busby ended up leaving after a little bit, and it just became me and Christian on our own after a while. And kind of died down, but we decided it was something we should keep doing, so we kept on writing, kept on playing, and that's how we found Zach Pryor and Michael McCuistion.
There are two-piece bands, but the sounds that I had in my head were much bigger than just a two-piece band. So I actually contacted Micah through Facebook. Cody, our engineer and producer, he runs sound at a local venue here called the Fire Escape. And they do like a Sunday night worship thing, and that's how I got to know Micah.
He came over to jam one time, and we just decided that we wanted him to be in the band. He felt like a piece that we needed, and we played and wrote with him for a little bit, and we decided that we needed a singer, and that's how we found Zach Pryor.
And we basically gave him like some songs that we had and some demos, and then we gave him songs that we thought that might fit our genre a little bit that he could try out. And he auditioned them, and I think it was at that audition we're like, okay, you can sing for us, that's cool.
And we just started writing and playing as much as we could, and that's how we got to the point where we decided that we wanted to record an EP. And so we did, and it was a good learning experience for sure. It was great. I took a lot away from it and stuff like that.
And that was the first time we had a producer work with our songs. We worked with a guy named Corey Martin out of bands The Radiance Effect and Storm Circus. And that was the first time that we had someone take our songs and kind of make them into these new shapes. That was something that I wasn't necessarily comfortable with, and it was definitely a learning process, but after that, we put our record out the following June, and we had our friend at the time, Brad Sommerfelt, hop on bass, and we did just a little bit of touring here and there.
But it eventually led to the breakup of A Cold Trip.
When Zach and Micah and Brad kind of split, it all started, I was going to a music production school in Chillicothe, Ohio called the Recording Workshop. And before I even left, we had some shows booked for when I came back, and had some other potential shows. While I was in Ohio, some things happened that were kind of out of my control. Zach and Mike and Brad are all very church-based, grew up in churches, and I grew up in church too, but I think our music and the songs that we were writing were kind of taking a turn, and I don't know if they were necessarily comfortable with that, but not only that, Lennon had some just growing up teenage stuff that he went through, and those guys just didn't necessarily agree with the decisions that Lennon was making.
My name is Michael McChristian. I'm 21 years old, and I'm the former lead guitar player for A Cold Trip Nowhere. I left A Cold Trip Nowhere mainly just because it seemed like in our writing processes lately, this was kind of one of the main things. It was just kind of like a lot of us were kind of going in different directions. I kind of left under circumstances. It was just like I didn't really explain why I left when I left. So there was just some kind of confusion a little bit.
Well, you know, the band started as Christian and Lennon and Zach. Anytime you go through a lineup change, it's a little bit of a setback, you know. But, you know, I think it all happened in the right timing.
I got a phone call, I think it was a Friday or Saturday, from Zach. He's like, hey man, I'm super sorry I haven't talked to you. Let me take you out to lunch.
I'm Zach Pryor. I'm 21 years old and I am the former lead vocalist for A Cold Trip Nowhere. I left because it was time for me to move on. It was time for me to focus on school and begin that part of my life. I knew that I couldn't put as much time into the band as I had been or as I wanted to. So it was time for me to move on. I hope there are no hard feelings. It was just what I needed to do.
Well, with my newfound knowledge of engineering and recording, I kind of came back and I really just went to the studio and started laying ideas out that I had. I had these demos on my phone and all these ideas in my head.
All right. After the second breakup, me and Christian we didn't want to stop doing what we were doing. We have a huge passion for what we were doing at the time, so we didn't want to stop. So me and him were just doing stuff on our own, trying to figure out what direction we needed to go in. So we kept writing, kept playing, and didn't really stop at all.
You know, I think I saw Zach at Sonic, and he shot me like a text message one night. He was like, hey man, just saw you. And that was right about the time we were actually talking about maybe having him come back to the band. And I didn't want him to think that I just wanted his friendship to be a part of the band. Like, I genuinely missed hanging out with Zach. Like my freshman and sophomore year, he was like my best friend, so.
When I first heard about the breakup, it was actually more around the time that Christian was kind of asking me to be back in the band. A Cold Trip Nowhere was always kind of in the back of my head, and every time I talked to Christian, I just sort of kind of wondered if he was going to bring it up and ask me back, but I never knew how any of that would have went because I was still doing the same things I've been doing, and I knew that as long as the band was going in the direction they had been, that I couldn't be a part of that.
I was just like, hey man, let's hang out, let's get together. So we started hanging out a little bit. And I had told him, like, you know, A Cold Trip Nowhere's vocalistless, and we would really like to have you back. We think the chemistry is where it would need to be. And he just told me, he was like, you know man, I've thought a lot about the same thing. And he's like, all the old stuff, all the bad things that happened, he's like, I'm totally over it. I forgive you guys, and I know you guys have forgiven me. He was like, so that's not even anything that needs to be worried about.
And instantly I kind of knew where the conversation was going, but I had just thoughts of this, can't do this, it'll just be the same as it was before.
He was just like, I just know that if we're gonna do this, we're gonna have to do it good. And he was like, so how about before we make any decisions, we sit down and write some songs and make a decision from there. If the chemistry's working, then let's do it. If it's not, then, you know, you guys do your thing. We pretty much, I had a riff and some progressions, and we just went from there. We sat down, we wrote, and it was, by the time we finished the song and played through it, we had all just looked at each other, Zach Lennon and I, in a room, and we were just like, oh my gosh, this is the way everything needs to be. And that song was World Trade Center, and I think it's probably my favorite song on the record, and I think everyone else would agree. It just absolutely is a Cold Trip Nowhere in its purest form.
The new A Cold Trip Nowhere is a little more raw as far as our music goes. Definitely a little more punk based, and just definitely back to the stuff that we wanted it to sound like originally.
Right now, we are currently tracking our 6-song EP, E Pluribus Unum, and I think it is me, Zach, and Lennon. And we're playing some shows here and there, but we're kind of waiting to do anything until we release the record.
I'm just excited. I'm excited to hear what other people think about it. Like, I don't know, it's super exciting. It's kind of nerve-wracking though, because you don't know what people are gonna expect from it. But I'm just gonna hope for the best, and I'm freaking stoked to hear what comes out and what people think. And I'm just excited to have new material out, and I'm excited to be able to go tour on that stuff and just play, you know, as many nights as possible and be cooped up in a van with a bunch of people.
You know, it really is an inspiration to me that these guys are so driven and passionate about what they do, and they're doing it for the right reasons.
But right now we're just focusing on putting this record out, and we're all super proud of it, and I think everybody else is going to be kind of taken by surprise because it's a brand new chapter for us.
But I can't let it go this time. What's going on inside your head? Can you help me understand? Let's dim the lights down, 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 let's dim the lights down.